Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Truth Seekers, an educational series geared towards re-educating Bahamians on the true value of this land. So today, this episode is going to be on an introduction to the mangroves. So you can see here, we are in what is known as the mangrove forest. So stay tuned because we have a very interesting and informative show for you guys. Okay, so generally, there are four types of mangroves in the Bahamas. You have the red mangroves, black mangroves, white mangroves, and buttonwood mangroves. So here, we are standing in front of the red mangroves. Now, what's significant about these particular mangroves is they serve as the primary nursery system for a lot of our marine resources. So that includes fish, lobster, just to name a few. And what is meant by marine nursery system is, it is within these roots of the red mangroves where these fish and other marine resources are spawned. So you can understand the significance of protecting these mangroves.
One distinguishing characteristic of the white mangrove is the presence of two glands, just below the base of the leaf. This is where excess salt is excreted. They sport small, fragrant flowers year-round. Red mangroves can be easily identified by their remarkably arched above-ground prop roots that transport air to their waterlogged below-ground roots. In the Bahamas, red mangroves can grow up to 20 feet in height. Black mangroves grow in very wet soil that's not heavily oxygenated, which is why their roots grow straight up into the air. These roots are called pneumatophores. Pneumatophores provide oxygen to the buried root system. The buttonwood mangrove is found along the coast, but in drier conditions than the red mangrove. You can easily remember the name of this tree because of these flowers, which are shaped like old-time buttons. The leaves are semi-succulent, green, and have two red notches at the base of the leaf. Many times when we talk about mangroves, if you talk about mangroves at all, we don't take into consideration how important these ecosystems are to our quality of life on these islands. The mangrove ecosystem in the Bahamas is the largest mangrove nursery system in the entire Western world and Caribbean.
So red mangroves get their name from the bright red color of the roots. And you'll find that the leaves of the red mangroves are smooth, leathery, and dark green. Okay, so during intense storms, these mangrove forests actually act as a buffer, reducing wave action, preventing erosion, and absorbing floodwaters. So you can see these are actually some really healthy looking red mangroves. I mean, just look at how big they grow. And all of that only helps our environment. And they also serve as a really good habitat for birds, protection from the elements. And as I said, a large percentage of our marine resources are born and protected in these prop roots.
When we cut open a fruit, like a juicy apple or even a dry bean pod, we find seeds inside. A fruit is a ripened ovary containing seeds. you might have learned that an ovary is part of the pistil of a flower. When the fruits of most trees fall to the ground, the outer ovary wall rots away. When the seeds come in contact with the soil, they germinate. Out of each individual seed sprouts the embryo of a new plant. But the red mangrove tree, which grows in the salty waters of the coast, does things much differently.
When it is mature, the red mangrove bears yellow, four-petaled flowers that are smaller than the tip of my finger. The ovary of the flower develops into a small fruit that grows to almost the size of a plum. But while flowering plants normally bear fruits that fall to the ground so their seeds can germinate, this isn't the case with the red mangrove. Believe it or not, the seed of the red mangrove germinates while the fruit is still attached to the tree. It happens when the fruit is tiny and not even fully developed.
Humans are viviparous, meaning the embryo develops inside of the mother, and the mother gives live birth. Now, a handful of plants are also considered viviparous, with embryos developing inside of ovaries that are still attached to the parent plant. This is very rare, but with a red mangrove tree, it is exactly the case. For the red mangrove, the seed actually germinates within the fruit, and the embryo begins to grow while it is still attached to the parent tree. It'll keep growing until it is about 6 inches or longer. Eventually, this propagule, or embryonic red mangrove plant, will break free from the fruit, fall into the water, and then float along horizontally. Some people call this a sea pencil. What it is a miniature, prepackaged mangrove tree.
Now at the mercy of the tides and the waves, the propagule may float for more than a year and wind up far from the parent tree. This has proven to be an incredibly efficient method of propagation, and today we can find red mangroves on tropical and subtropical coasts around the globe. The tip end of the root is the heaviest part of the propagule. As it becomes more waterlogged, it begins to float vertically, and eventually, perhaps during a low tide, it becomes planted in the mud. At the top end of the propagule, there is a tiny cone of embryonic leaves. With the root now firmly planted, the leaves begin to gather sunlight and grow.
And after all of that information has been shared, can you believe that we haven't even scratched the surface? Tune in next week for another exciting episode of Truth Seekers.